Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, Mama.
Morning, Chairperson. Morning.
Morning, Chairperson.
I just want to check how many members do we have present in the meeting. I heard Member Fasia. Lebu, can you assist me just on checking how many members do we have?
Good morning, Chairperson. For now, it's Chairperson, it's Member Fasia and Member Ngube.
Sometimes about food,
Yes.
And Honorable,
as well.
Honorable Silas is also here.
Okay, so we have 3 members and myself, we are 4.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Will we check then from the department, national and the province, are they here?
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson. Amanda van Reenen speaking from the National Department. Our team is present. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. From the province?
Yes. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson. It's Dora Mudise, the Deputy Director General for Natural Resources Management. I am attending as acting head of department. The head of department is on leave, and the colleagues are also in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we are ready to start. Lebu, how many stakeholders were able to drop in at the moment?
Chair, can you repeat again?
How many stakeholders are in attendance in terms of them being able to log in?
Chair, I see we have roughly about 30 stakeholders, but we've loaded more than that, so they should be joining us. But for now, we have about 30 roughly.
So when you're saying more than that, can you give an estimation? How many have we loaded?
We've loaded about 50 from our side for those that had requested data.
Okay, so it's about 30 that have already logged in.
Yes, Chair. It's just an estimate, but I think it's more than that.
Okay, with that, I think we can start, honorable members. But when we deal on the attendance, I requested you and Mr. Domo to be in a position to give me the information of the stakeholders on which corridors do they come from. Do they represent women, youth, and people with disabilities? So I'm going to start with the meeting, but when we deal with attendance, then I'm going to request you to read that information because I think it's important for the public participation here.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you very much.
There's somebody who needs to mute. It's just saying PT. I don't know if it's print somebody, but it's going to disturb the meeting if he doesn't mute now. Sorry, Chair, to disturb.
Okay, let's check if that person, I'm not sure, maybe it's Hansard. Let's just check. Lebo, are you checking that?
Yes, Chair. It's not, I will try and mute for my side.
Okay. With that, then, Lebo, can you flight the program for the day?
The program is flat, Chair. I put it earlier on. I don't know if members can see it.
I cannot see it on my side. Members, can you see the program on your side? On my side, I don't have it. Yeah, here it is now. Thank you very much. Then, members, I think we may start with our meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to allow stakeholders to engage with the proposed two bills, and will also give them an opportunity to make submissions. Members, I'm on item 1, opening and welcoming. My name is Lindiwela Sindwa. I am the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, responsible for oversight and monitoring on the Department of Economic Development, Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development Portfolio Committee. Let me take this opportunity and welcome all present in the meeting. Honorable members, thank you very much for making yourself available for this important session. And I know that will have taken your time because already we are on recess. Besides being recess, also we've taken your 3 hours from your Saturday. But thank you very much, honorable members, for availing yourself. Let me also take this opportunity and welcome the delegation from the National Department and the delegation from the Provincial Department. Because this is public hearing, honorable members, somewhere those who want to speak, especially the stakeholders, you are allowed to speak in the language that you are comfortable with. We'll have requested for translation. I hope system will not fail us. With that, then, honorable members, let me take this opportunity and welcome all the stakeholders that are here. We are on this meeting or in this public hearing, which is visual, because we all know that we are under the strictly regulations of COVID-19. Although the president has said we'll be moving to level 1, that will only happen on Monday. But even if we'll be moving to level 1, the president emphasized that we still need to observe the regulation to check the social distance, to put our masks if we are going to find ourselves in a public space or where there will be more than 2 people in that room. We must use our mask. So with that, then, honorable members, I think we are happy as the portfolio committee now that at least the president is moving us to level 1, especially from the side of the economy, because we all know the challenges that we've been facing, and our economy is facing serious challenges. With that, then, honorable members, let me take this opportunity and allow members first to introduce themselves. I will request members that you switch on your video and you introduce yourself. Thank you very much, members. Honorable members.
Yes, Chairperson. Speaking now is Prince Monges.
Prince Monges from? Prince Monges from?
Prince Monges Tom from Contralesa, that's the Congress of Traditional Leaders in South Africa.
Okay, sir, just hold on for me. I just want members first, members of the portfolio committee.
Okay.
To introduce themselves, and as I've requested them to put on their video so that all the stakeholders can see the honorable members who are here. Honorable members, can we start? Member Hassan, Member Mnube, Member Silias, could you please introduce yourself in the meeting? And all other members who are in this meeting.
Sure. I can turn on my video. I don't have such great reception, but I'll do so regardless. The lighting is a bit off. Let me turn around. Hi, everyone. My name is
We lost you there, Member Hassan.
Chairperson, I got kicked out due to some poor connectivity. Should I continue or start again?
Please start again.
Okay, sure, Chairperson. I've tried to turn on my video, but like I said, my connectivity is a bit off. Anyway, my name is Honorable Fasiya Hassan. I'm a member of the Portfolio Committee. I'm also really looking forward to hearing from our stakeholders today to really get an idea of what the 2 bills really mean and really what we can do to work with our communities. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Hassan. Member Mnube. Member Mnube, are you in the meeting? Member Silias, can you introduce yourself, honorable members?
Chairperson, I'm in the meeting. I'm talking for the 3rd time, but seemingly you are not hearing me.
It means you did not mute your mic, honorable. Can you please mute your mic and put your face on the video so that the stakeholders can see yourself and you introduce yourself?
Okay. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and all the stakeholders that we are having here. My name is Honorable Pinky Mnube, a member of the Portfolio Committee. Happy Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Mnube. Member Silias. Member Silias. Okay, whilst we are waiting for Member Silias, then I think, thank you very much, honorable members. I was informed that we have about 30 stakeholders who have already logged in, especially those who requested for data, but we might be having more on those who were able to use their own data. Let me take this opportunity now and allow the stakeholders just to introduce themselves for the purpose of the record. Just your name and the organization that you come from. If possible, tell us which region you're coming from.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Lucy Mtembu from THP in Gauteng. I live here in Boysen, in Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good day, honorable member.
Yes.
Honorable member.
Yes.
This is Honorable Blackie from Sidibeng region.
Honorable Plaki from Sidibeng. Thank you very much. Can you get the third person?
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Zandinda Mase from FBO, Joburg region.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Damase, FBO.
Good morning. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, honorable members. My name is Pastor Nongaba Musunkutu from Joburg region, faith-based organization. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Nongaba.
Good morning, Chair. Tawazani, everyone. My name is Pepisile Masego. I come from the Traditional Healers Organization. Thank you, Chair.
Can we get the next one?
Morning, Chair. Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
My name is Prince Mongezi Tom from Contralesa, Johannesburg region.
Thank you very much, Babu Mongezi. Can we get the next one?
Good morning.
Evening, Chair.
Is Matumi Makwela here from the Minerals Council, South Africa.
Thank you very much, sir.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair. This is Mordecai Ndlovu. I'm calling from the Ekurhuleni Youth Business Council. Thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you very much, Babu Ndlovu. Can we get the next one? Sicela olandelayo okwazile ukuconnecta azichaze azazise.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Lindy Muhlabane from Greater Johannesburg Intercession Task Team.
Siyabonga, Mam Lindy. Olandelayo.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
And honourable members. My name is Belinda Cooper from Magaliesburg Biosphere Organisation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next one, please.
Sawubona, Chairperson.
Sanibonani Mage.
Oh, uNonhlanhla Mbele lokhulumayo weRastafari United Front, Social and Economic Development.
Siyabonga Mama Nonhlanhla. Celo landelayo.
Morning. Morning.
Good morning Mama Nonhlanhla, sicela uphume evidweni sinikeze abanye abalandelayo.
Okay.
Morning.
Morning, honorable member. Morning.
Good morning. Please just unmute and introduce yourself. If you are able, put your face on the video. You say your name, the organization you come from, and the region you're coming from.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Thokozani futhi.
Thokoza okay.
Ukoko muntu lokhulumayo under i-THO organization. Ngise ekuteni.
Siyabonga mntu omdala.
Hello, Chair.
Morning, Chair. Hello.
Igama lami nguPhetulo Montsha, ngibuya ku Tembisa Agri Forum eTembisa.
Siyabonga Baba Montsha. Celo landelayo.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Gloria Mkhalo Khulumayo from THO Ekurhuleni branch.
Siyabonga Mama Mukhale.
Good morning, Chair.
Thokoza nkoko muntu sicela uswitch off video yakho nesandla sakho. Thokoza okay. Celo landelayo.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning.
I'm Successor Secretary, FBO, Gauteng Region.
Thank you very much. Can we have the next one, Mam Sikiti Siyabonga? Sicela mhlambe olandelayo okwaziyo ukuthi azichaze emhlanganweni. Awukhona ukufaka ubuso bakho.
Morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Thokozani.
Thokozani ke.
Yeah, umkhulu Chauke lona, uraphulu Chauke, chairperson ye inyanga zendabuko ku City of Johannesburg.
Thokozani mantabata.
Thokoza.
Sicela olandelayo.
Why are you not doing a meeting in that laptop?
Hello, this is Reverend Fololo from Faith-Based Organization in Johannesburg.
Siyabonga Reverend Fololo. Celo landelayo.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to do because I can't do.
Re kopa a latelang a ka kgona gore a itsebise gore ke ena mang ka mo meetinging a re bolelle le kopano ya hae a tswang ko yona o kapa gore yena o tswa ko regioning e feng ka mo Gauteng. O teng motho o kana a itsebisa ka mo meetinging? I'm at number 19. I just wanted to capture 20 people for now so that we know that we have stakeholders in the meeting. Because unfortunately for a visual meeting, I'm not able to see the warm bodies. For it is important that at least we put on record who is here, especially for the purpose of record. And then those who will be joining us later, it will be okay. So I recorded up until number 18. So I need 2 stakeholders who can just introduce themselves. Anyone is ready?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, leadership. Just for a point of clarity, stakeholders, you mean any structure that is part of this meeting?
Yeah, any structure that is part of this meeting, as long as you are not coming from the department.
Okay, my leader. No, then I am one of them.
Okay.
Thank you, my leader. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this very strategic meeting. My name is Mordecai Sizolengosindlovu, and I represent, I am the convener of the Ekurhuleni Youth Business Council, a wing under the Ekurhuleni Business Council. Our responsibility is to find opportunities and speak to policy, and also come up with strategies that empower and build business opportunities for youth and women within the Ekurhuleni region. Our mission at large is to ensure that... Yes, my leader.
We are still registering people who have attended the meeting. I think I have captured point number 8.
Oh, okay, noted. Apologies, my leader. I'm jumping there now. Sorry. Okay, let me subtract that.
I think we will then have other people. I think I'll register stakeholders who are here. Is there anyone who's ready? Let's go register here.
Hello.
The next item, without wasting time, because I think we are now in the new normal. Data is the factor. So let me take this opportunity and welcome all the stakeholders here. We have noted that we have representation from CDB, representation from Joburg, representation from Khalis, representation from Ekurhuleni, also have other organizations that are. With that, then, honorable members, I request, I'm not sure who are those, we can see on the video. Please switch off your video. Heritage. Ngihamba nephesha lami inkomo yehlaba. Ngihamba nogogo wami uManzini bantu abadala. Ngaloko nje ngiyabingelela. Let me just check if label is translation active. I hope so. But for now, for members who did not understand, I was just introducing myself as a new, because I said this is a Heritage Month, therefore it is important that I also introduce myself. I welcome also, or I enter this meeting with my ancestors. One of my ancestors, who's the leading one, we call him, or is called Mkhulu Nkomo Uyahlaba. And I'm also with Ugogo Umanzini. Ladies and gentlemen, when I say Thokozani or when I say Siyathokoza, it's in two ways. One, I'm greeting you. At the very same time, I am saying thank you. So this word is used intertwined. So just briefly, I think we'll have time to introduce ourselves as the traditional healers and the traditional leaders. I'm hoping that the legislature will give us time as a session so that people must know who we are and how do we do things. So zonke abantu abadala indlondlo ngiyazi kusebenzeka kunabogobela ngigojwana elisha elisaphuma ke khona ebuntozeni. I'm going to request that the National Department starts with the presentation. You will introduce yourself and the delegation that is with you. You have 20 minutes to do the presentation. My understanding why we're giving you 20 minutes is because there was a pre-workshop with all the stakeholders. So the stakeholders that are here were of the view that they do have an understanding of what does the bill entails and what is expected of them today. And we've also requested that some of them who have attended the workshop or the pre-workshop, they should make submissions. So I will be updated as the session goes on. Let me allow National Department 20 minutes to make your presentation on the Environment Management Law Amendment Bill.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson. I just want to make sure that you can hear me. I'm Amanda van Leunen. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Good morning, and good morning to all the honourable members and the colleagues from the various departments, municipalities, and especially the stakeholders from the various regions in the province. With your indulgence, if it's acceptable, could I please share my screen so that I can project the presentation? And while I'm doing that, Chairperson, I would like to quickly introduce the team. I have Ms. Buyiswa Ndbongo, Ms. Magdal Boshoff, Mr. Mark Jardine, Mr. Vincent Gulolo, Mr. Gata Mokwena, and then from our forestry branch, we have Ms. Shumani Divani, who would be responsible for the presentation on the National Forest Amendment Bill, Mr. Cyril Ndal, Ms. Dumeza Nudada, and Ms. Gwen Schwabe. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Can I check if members can see the presentation that I have shared?
I can see it. I hope all members can see it.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Without wasting more time, this presentation is about the NEMA Laws Amendment Act, Bill 14D of 2017. We have, for purposes of the presentation and for distribution to members, just added a slide to explain some of the acronyms, but we will try to explain this as the slides contain these terms. The National Environmental Laws Amendment Bill makes amendments to the National Environmental Management Act as well as certain specific environmental management acts. The National Environmental Management Act we refer to as NEMA, and it's the overarching umbrella legislation for environment in the country. And the specific acts then deal with specific aspects like air, biodiversity, coastal matters, protected areas, waste, and so on. These acts are implemented by different competent authorities, the National Department of Environment, Forestry, Fisheries, the 9 provinces, and also the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy in certain circumstances. And the presentation on this bill is based on the bill that was introduced in Parliament in May 2017, but it was passed in November 2018 by the National Assembly, and this really just summarizes that version of the bill. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this and for arranging this public hearing. We know that there was previous sessions, but in order for everybody to understand, I will run through the slides to try and explain some of the most important portions of the amendments. The first portion of the Amendment Act talks to definitions. There are definitions that are being amended, such as financial provision. There are then new definitions inserted that are related to some of these matters, like latent environmental impacts, mitigate, rehabilitate, remediate, and also insertion of definitions for municipality, municipal council, and municipal manager, because some of the amendments introduce these terms. NEMA Section 2 contains certain principles which apply to all organs of state that may significantly affect the environment. And the principle that we have added or proposed to add in this Amendment Act is that this environment sector must advance and promote the full participation of Black professionals. Section 24 of NEMA deals with environmental authorizations and the instances when you require this authorization. It sets out who the competent authority is, and it makes provision for a range of environmental management instruments which can either replace the authorization requirement or make it easier for a proponent or developer to obtain this. The section also provides for prohibitions and restrictions and for certain areas and empowers the minister to make regulations. Clause 3 of the amendment bill reflects amendments to Section 24. It attempts to facilitate more flexibility in the use of the range of environmental management instruments. It provides for conditions and requirements associated with the use and development of these instruments. Quite importantly, it provides for a publicly held and available register of any adopted environmental management instruments so that the public is aware. It makes certain textual or editorial amendments to certain prohibition and restriction provisions. It clarifies the competency of the Minerals Minister, and very importantly, to ease the doing of business, it provides for the simultaneous submission of various applications for authorizations, licenses, and permits required under the various acts that we are amending here in order to ensure integrated processes and decisions. It then also provides for the issuing of integrated licenses in instances where the same competent authority deals with all these matters. Looking at section 24G, this deals with rectification and consequences with commencement of an illegal activity. In other words, if you've commenced without an authorization when you needed one. And clause 5 is proposed to be amended to enable a person who has taken ownership of a property on which an unlawful structure or development was built in the past to have that structure authorized. It also allows a successor in title or a person in control of land to lodge the application for that previously unlawful development. It makes it mandatory for the authority, either the minister or the MEC, to direct an applicant to undertake certain actions to rectify, and it increases the administrative fine from 5 million rand to a maximum of 10 million rand. Looking at section 24N, clause 6, this currently deals with environmental management programs. It has a long list of content requirements, and we are proposing that this list of content requirements should rather be replaced with the ability to prescribe what content is relevant for the use of environmental management programs in certain contexts through regulations instead of in the Act. Section 24O deals with the consideration of authorization applications and consultation requirements. It makes it mandatory for the authorities to consult affected state departments, but the amendment proposes the enabling of the environmental assessment practitioner or the consultant who normally runs this process to also consult with the State Department during that process, and this is really just because of practical reasons. Looking at section 24P and the newly introduced section 24PA, both of these deal with financial provisioning required to undertake progressive rehabilitation, decommissioning, closure and post-closure for mitigation, remediation and rehabilitation of adverse environmental impacts. The amendment enables the minister or the MEC to prescribe the instances when financial provision is required for activities requiring environmental authorization. The financial provision must be determined before the minister issues that environmental authorization. And when we speak about an applicant, a holder of an environmental authorization, a holder of an old order right, it just really means that people who are involved in the mining space and those who are required to have financial provision for activities that require environmental authorization must provide financial provision to ensure that progressive rehabilitation of those impacts can be undertaken. The clause stipulates that rehabilitation, remediation, mitigation must be undertaken annually. Currently, it's quiet about how often this must be done, and it also sets out the vehicles that can be used to set aside the money. An independent party can be appointed if the authorities are not satisfied with the determination of the review or the review of the financial provision, and the respective ministers or MECs may use any part of that funding to fund rehabilitation actions if the person responsible for the operation has failed to undertake those rehabilitation actions. The newly inserted section 24PA deals specifically with financial provisioning for mining. It requires that a person that is a holder of an authorization for mining or directly related aspects, or the holder of a mining right or permit, must maintain and retain financial provision until they receive a closure certificate for the mining operation. They must review their environmental liability and, if necessary, adjust the financial provision every 3 years. They must audit the financial provision independently every 3 years, and they must submit an audit report to the minister responsible for mineral resources every 5 years, or in the case of a mining permit which doesn't have such a long lifespan, every 3 years. Then also quite importantly, it enables the publication of the decision of the Minerals Minister on the review of the financial provision publicly within 5 days of that decision having been, the person being notified of that review decision. And again, it is stressed that these measures to mitigate, rehabilitate and remediate must be undertaken annually. The clause empowers the Minerals Minister in consultation with the Water Minister to approve the drawdown of financial funding for rehabilitation to support closure initiatives and rehabilitation actions, but not longer than 10 years before the mining operation will end. The clause also deals with latent or residual environmental impacts, meaning those things that don't happen while the mining operation exists, but only comes 10 or 20 or 30 years later on. And it ensures that the financial provision that has been set aside for this purpose is transferred to the Minerals Minister, because the holder will receive a closure certificate and will no longer be responsible for a mining operation. It also allows the Minerals Minister to access the financial provision when the closure certificate that was used is insurance. The Minerals Minister and the Water Minister will be empowered to use the financial provision to rehabilitate or to manage environmental impacts if the person that was responsible to do so has failed to do so. Turning to Section 28 of NEMA, this deals with the duty of care and the remediation of environmental damage. Clause 12 of the Amendment Bill empowers the Director General of the National Departments and the heads of department of the provinces to issue directives under certain circumstances, but this power, importantly, is also now given to municipal managers. In line with the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, the section is amended to allow for notification and an opportunity to make representations before that directive is issued, and where remedial measures have to be undertaken by the authority because a person has not complied with the directive, they can now claim the costs already incurred as well as anticipatory costs. Clauses 13 to 19 amend sections 31A to 31Q of NEMA, which deals with the appointment of environmental management inspectors in all three the spheres of government, and also environmental mineral resources inspectors in the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to do compliance and enforcement in respect of the NEMA as well as the specific Environmental Management Acts. Sections 31B, BA, BB, and C are amended to clarify that the Environment Minister and the Water Minister as well as the MECs may only designate these inspectors from organs of state that execute the function. And this is really just to ensure that only authorities that have the legal mandate to monitor compliance and enforce these provisions have designated inspectors. There's also the power to appoint environmental, mineral and petroleum inspectors, also specifically within the Petroleum Agency of South Africa for petroleum resources enforcement and compliance measures. The bill provides for national consistency in the powers and duties to the two sets of inspectors, whether they are undertaking compliance enforcement with national or with provincial legislation. It empowers the Environment Minister after consultation with the Minerals Minister to support or undertake compliance monitoring and enforcement measures if it's necessary to address harm caused by specifically mining-related activities. The same standard of training would be provided for in the Amendment Bill for both types of inspectors, and there's also the intention to prescribe through regulation a code of conduct. The power of the inspectors are clarified in the bill, and a member of the SA Police Service has the same powers as these inspectors, excluding the power to conduct routine inspections in terms of Section 31K and the power to issue and enforce compliance notices in terms of Sections 31L to 31O. Then looking at Section 34E of the NEMA, this deals with the treatment of seized live specimens, and it's provided that live specimens must, instead of may, be deposited with a suitable institution, rescue center, or facility, and it also aligns it with Section 30A of the Criminal Procedure Act. The regulatory power of the Environment Minister to specify offences and to prescribe the amount for admission of guilt fines is also amended to ensure that it contextualizes Section 57(5) of the Criminal Procedure Act. The bill clarifies that the Minerals Minister may delegate his or her powers under NEMA to an organ of state, may subdelegate those powers or withdraw that delegation. And it empowers the water minister as well as the municipal manager of a municipality to delegate these powers under NEMA to officials either in the water department or the municipality, as the case may be. Clause 34 amends Section 43, which deals with appeals against decisions taken under delegated authority in terms of NEMA or the specific Environmental Management Acts. It allows appeals against the decision taken by an Air Quality Act licensing authority, where that licensing authority is the municipality, and in that case, the appeal goes to the municipal council. The bill clarifies that an appeal will not automatically suspend a Section 28(4) directive or administrative enforcement notice that's aimed at addressing significant harm to the environment, unless there is good cause shown to the satisfaction of the minister, and an appeal may also be issued if that directive was issued by a delegated official. The bill clarifies offences and penalties. It substitutes certain criminal offences, like the request is replaced with an instruction from an environmental management inspector or mineral petroleum inspector, and some new offences and associated penalties are introduced. Moving on to the amendments suggested to the Protected Areas Act, currently Section 48 prohibits commercial mining operations in national parks, special nature reserves and nature reserves, but one of the subsections allows commercial mining specifically in protected environments on the condition that the minister issues a written permission. However, there's no clarity on when a written permission and what process should be followed for the indication that a written permission is appropriate in the circumstances, and the amendment attempts to provide certain criteria under which this permission may be issued by the minister. The minister may also require additional information if it's deemed necessary to make that determination. Currently, Section 57 of the Protected Areas Act only allows for the CEO of the national parks, SA National Parks, to be on the board. But since the King 3 report was released, it's also important that the CFO should be on the board, and this amendment provides for that. Section 48A of the Protected Areas Act restricts certain activities in a marine protected environment. But Section 18(9), which provides for offences and penalties, doesn't make it an offence where a person undertakes a restricted activity in contravention of the Protected Areas Act. So the clause amends Section 18(9) and creates an offence in that respect. And it also rectifies certain incorrect references to offences that is currently contained in the Protected Areas Act. Moving on to the Biodiversity Act amendments. The bill extends the scope of the objects of the Biodiversity Act to clarify that the object is to provide that the use of indigenous biological resources is ecologically sustainable, including taking into account the well-being of any faunal biological resource. The amendment specifically focuses on this introduction in various clauses, and it empowers the minister to prohibit by notice in the Gazette any activity that may negatively impact on the well-being of a faunal biological resource. This prohibition will be subject to the conditions that the minister will specify in the notice. Public consultation must be undertaken before a final notice is published, and the power to make regulations is also extended to include in relation to the well-being of a faunal biological resource, making of regulations for those. The bill amends Section 3 of the NEMLA, which states that it provides for the state's trusteeship over biological diversity. Currently, and in terms of the South African common law, all wild animals are regarded as a term that we call res nullius, meaning it belongs to everybody, but it belongs to nobody in particular. The implication of this common law principle is that once a wild animal escapes from the land on which it occurred, the owner of that land loses ownership of the wild animal that has escaped. But we must also be aware of the provision of the Game Theft Act that changed the status of wild animals, because it provides for a person to retain ownership of an animal that has escaped from land if that land has been adequately fenced, and in respect of which a certificate of adequate enclosure has been issued by the Premier of the province in which the land is situated. The implication is that where the animal has escaped from state-owned land, the state may lose the custodianship of those animals. And the amendment provides that the minister may specify the species and the circumstances under which the state will remain the custodian. And this amendment really just gives effect to a 2012 judgment of the High Court, where we were told that we should rather legislate for that and not rely on court cases to resolve these issues on a case-by-case basis. Currently, all invasive species are treated the same in the Biodiversity Act, but the amendment allows the minister to determine measures suitable for the different species. It currently contains a requirement that every landowner must know whether they have invasive species on their land, but we know that it's impractical for people to know that. They may have some invasive plant and not know it. So we are focused on the more dangerous invasive species from a health or environmental perspective, and these should be addressed, and the minister is given the power to prescribe the circumstances in which written notification of these species must be given to the competent authority instead of all species. The bill empowers the minister to prescribe measures to control or eradicate listed invasive species, and it categorization of species in the regulations is not taken into account. Similarly, as previously under the Protected Areas Act, it also allows for the Chief Financial Officer, this time to be on the board of the SA National Biodiversity Institute. It also clarifies that an MEC for environment in each province must also follow the consultative process that's set out in sections 99 and 100 of NEMLA when exercising any power under this act that requires such consultation. Looking at the Air Quality Act, Section 13 deals with the establishment of the National Air Quality Advisory Committee, and it is currently compulsory to appoint this committee, but the bill provides the minister with the discretion to establish the committee when appropriate. Section 22A of the Air Quality Act is amended to provide for the consequences of unlawfully conducting listed activities, and it will address two scenarios. It will deal with the old contraventions under the Atmospheric Pollution Prevention Act and also the contraventions against the atmospheric emission license requirements under the more recent Air Quality Act. The bill provides for the process and procedures to be followed in addressing non-compliance with the law. It empowers the minister to direct an applicant to undertake certain actions, including public participation processes as prescribed in the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations. It sets administrative fines to a maximum of 10 million rand, very similar to the amendments to Section 24G in NEMA. The bill clarifies that a province must be regarded as a licensing authority where the activity falls within the boundaries of more than one metro municipality or more than one district municipality. And it indicates the instances when the minister is the licensing authority to issue these licenses for air quality activities. The bill also, similar to NEMA, facilitates the issuing of integrated authorizations where it's possible to align the environmental authorization, the waste management, and the atmospheric emission licensing activities and processes. The current provision contained in the Air Quality Act appears to suggest that the minister will always be the licensing authority, but the intention is to provide that the minister is only in limited instances the licensing authority. In other words, where that minister is also the competent authority under the environmental authorization requirements of NEMA and also the waste management license requirements under the Waste Act. The bill enables a cooperative agreement to be reached between the municipality, the MEC, and the minister as to who the licensing authority should be for a particular application if it's necessary to agree to such. It inserts a new Section 47A to provide the licensing authority with the legal power to revoke or suspend a license, subject to the legal requirements that are set out and also the procedures that are set out for revoking or suspending the license. The bill clarifies and ensures that the appeal regulations that are already contained in Section 43 of NEMA are also applicable to these air quality decision appeals. The Integrated Coastal Management Act, Section 60, has been amended to allow for the issuing of notices for the removal of structures that were erected prior to the commencement of the Act. The amendment clarifies the retrospective effect of Section 60, and this is currently implied, but it may leave some doubt. This is also in line with the existing Section 59 of the Coastal Management Act and also Section 28 of the National Environmental Management Act, which expressly enables retrospective application. Chapter 9 of the Integrated Coastal Management Act requires a certain appeal procedure, etc., to be followed, but this is sufficiently catered for under the NEMA regime already, and therefore this chapter is proposed for deletion as it currently allows for an unfortunate duplication of requirements and could cause confusion at the moment. The Waste Act, there are certain definitions that are being moved from Schedule 3 and inserted into Section 1 of the Waste Act. These deal with building and demolition waste, business waste, domestic waste, general waste, hazardous waste, etc. The bill also inserts definitions for residue deposit and residue stockpile, and these are matters that have been moved over from the 2002 mining legislation, the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act, and this is to ensure that there's alignment with NEMA. It allows for certain amendments to the definition of the term waste to provide clarity on when something constitutes waste and when not. And it also clarifies that currently residue deposits and stockpiles are managed under the Waste Act, but this will be moved under the NEMA provisions if this Amendment Act comes into effect. The bill amends certain provisions regarding the Waste Management Bureau. It's now established as a fully fledged entity. It's a juristic person with a board, but in the absence of the board being fully functional, the powers and duties revert to the Minister for Environment. And it also sets out specifically the supervisory powers that the Minister has. The bill amends certain of the existing sections in relation to the Waste Management Bureau, and these are containing general powers governing board matters, specifically in relation to the composition, the membership, qualification, appointment procedure, the terms of office of members of the board, and the conditions of their appointment. And then certain new sections, 34M to 34Z, are introduced, which set out additional governance matters. The bill also clarifies that an owner of land that is likely to be contaminated has the legal obligation to notify the minister of that contamination as soon as the owner becomes aware of it. And it also clarifies that a site assessment report must be submitted together with a remediation plan. It also indicates that the minister must keep a national register of all contaminated land. Section 43 of the Waste Act identifies licensing authorities for different waste management licenses. The Minerals Minister is identified as one of these authorities to issue these licenses insofar as the waste activities constitute mining or are directly related to mining. The bill ensures that the Minerals Minister is identified as the licensing authority and is responsible for the waste management licensing system implementation insofar as these activities are or are directly related to mining. The bill facilitates an agreement between the licensing authorities on implementation of the system, and in exceptional circumstances where the MEC unreasonably fails to take a decision to issue a waste management license or not within the prescribed time frame, the bill provides that an applicant may request the minister to take the decision. But we were mindful of the relevant sections of the Constitution, which provides that the Premier and the members of the Executive Council has the power to implement all national legislation within the Schedule 4 and 5 constitutional functional areas, except where the Constitution or an Act provides otherwise. Currently, the variation of a waste management license is not subject to a fee, but it has been established that in practice this involves a lot of work, and therefore Clause 71 provides for the payment of a nominal fee in relation to variation thereof. Clause 72 and Clause 73 are consequential amendments regarding residue deposits and stockpiles. They are no longer to be regulated under the Waste Act, but will move under the fold of NEMA. It also creates an offence if a person contravenes a provision of a norm or a standard, and it deletes the current powers of the minister to make regulations for residue deposits and stockpiles under the Waste Act, as this would be provided for under NEMA. The provisions of Section 74 do not provide the Minerals Minister with the legal power to issue exemptions, insofar as these exemptions relate to provisions administered by that minister. The scope of exemption applications also appear to be too wide, so clauses 76 to 79 amend the Waste Act provisions Section 74 to 77 to provide for certain consequential editorial amendments to empower the Minerals Minister to issue an exemption insofar as that exemption power resides with the Minerals Minister. The bill also clarifies that there will be no exemption from the actual requirement to obtain a waste management license. We have also adjusted the old terminology, for instance, the use of the term Minister of Water Affairs and Forestry, and replaced it with Minister responsible for water affairs throughout the Waste Act. As I've said before, Schedule 3 and Section 1 deal with the movement of the definition of waste and certain other definitions from Schedule 3 to Section 1 of the Waste Act, and this is contained in Clause 81 of the Amendment Bill. Looking at the NEMA amendment that was made in 2008, it appears that there's still a legal uncertainty whether an environmental management plan or program issued under the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act is deemed to be an environmental authorization under NEMA or not, prior to the implementation of the One Environmental System in December 2014. This bill proposes an amendment to the Clause 12 of the 2008 Amendment Act to provide some legal clarity in this respect, and to say that an EMP or a program or plan approved under the old regime before 8 December 2014 will be deemed to be approved under the National Environmental Management Act. The bill provides clarity that if an environmental authorization or waste management license was required for activities related to mining before 8 December 2014, and that authorization or license was obtained prior to commencement of the mining activities, or if an MPRDA right or permit was required and obtained before commencement, then the authorization, the waste management license, or the mining right permit, whatever the case may be in the circumstance, is deemed to be fulfillment of the requirements of the National Environmental Management Act as well as the Waste Act. However, if you required these authorizations, but it was not obtained or the authorization was refused, you will not be regarded as being in compliance with the requirements. The bill further provides that the Minerals Minister may direct that a person who holds a right or permit under the old mining regime may upgrade the environmental management plan or program if the operations contained in those plans or programs are likely to result in unacceptable pollution, ecological degradation, or environmental damage. And the bill enables the minister to then issue an authorization once those deficiencies have been rectified. The bill provides for transitional provisions regarding residue deposits and stockpiles. I've spoken about that. It just merely says that waste management licenses or approvals issued for these under the Waste Act will remain valid until they lapse or until they are replaced under the new regime. It also provides clarity that the regulations for these matters that were developed under the Waste Act will remain valid and will be regarded as having been developed under NEMA when it falls into the fold of the National Environmental Management Act. Then the bill finally provides for transitional provisions also for the Waste Management Bureau. It clarifies that anything that was done by the Bureau under the now repealed Part 7A of the Waste Act will remain valid until any subsequent new provisions will replace and override it. The bill indicates that the Bureau in place at the time of the commencement of this Amendment Act will remain in place as members of the board until new members are appointed in terms of the newly introduced Section 34G. The bill then also clarifies that the minister may direct the employees or the CEO of the Bureau at the time of the coming into effect of this Amendment Act to be absorbed into the new structure in their existing provisions or positions. And this is really just to ensure that there's a smooth transition. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. That is the presentation on the NEMA Laws Amendment Act. And thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And as I indicated earlier on that I'm hoping that all the stakeholders that are here have attended the pre-workshop. If that is the case, all the stakeholders have attended the workshop. I take it that the bill was clarified to them and those who had questions, the questions were clarified. But let me take this opportunity and allow stakeholders, if they have questions on the bill, they can ask questions now. And also those who want to make submissions, they can do that now, because we still have the second bill that we must consider. Honorable members who will comment at the end of the meeting, members will remember that we had a session where the department made a presentation. But, I'm making a mistake, my apology. Let me allow the Department of Agriculture in the province to make comments. Anyone from the department to make comments on the bill before we allow stakeholders. Bengicela ke abantu abadala abakhona ngaphakathi endlini, laba abafuna ukuphawula, bazofuna ukubuza kulo mthetho ohlongozwayo okanye kulama changes ahlongozwayo kulo mthetho. Ngicela ke nakuceda ukukhuluma i-Department ye-Agriculture ngizonikeza ithuba. kodwa ngisekutheni abantu abaningi ba-attendile i-workshop wachazwa kabanzi lo mthetho. So namhlanje sizokucela kakhulu ukuthi laba abafuna ukufaka imibono yabo okanye bafuna ukuphefumula ngokwenza ngephecelezi i-submission zobanikeza ithuba ke ukuthi benze lokho kulo mthetho. Let me allow the department, the provincial department, to make their presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. We have got our manager responsible for corporate legal services, Mr. Estienne van Wyk, who will present our view from a provincial perspective. Estienne, please load and present.
All I'm requesting, Mr. Estienne, please don't read the document word by word. If possible, make summary, because as I indicated earlier on, there was a pre-workshop. So largely today, it's a meeting for the stakeholders to make their submission.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I also want to say good morning to all fellow South African citizens in this meeting. The presentation will be has been shared. I think in the interest of time and with your permission, we can go to the last slide, if you agree, because to a great extent, Mrs. van Drienen has already covered the presentation, which is basically setting out the contents of the amendment bill. So I don't want to, if you agree, I don't want to duplicate what has already been said just now. Yes, with your permission, Chair.
Yes, you can go to your last slide. Akuchazile-ke abantu abadala and everyone okhona ngaphakathi komhlangano ukuthi i-presentation yabo icishe iyafana naloko okukhulunywa u-National Department. So akafuni-ke ukuthi aphinde lokho sebakukhulumile. Azokwenza-ke ukuthi aye ekugcineni kulokhu bona njenge-provincial department abakushoyo okanye abakuhlongozayo okanye abakubonayo kulo mthetho ohlongozwayo. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is just a short summary of our the legal unit's take on the proposed amendments. The GROT is generally in support of the proposed amendments. It will eliminate many of the current interpretation issues in the NEMA and the CMAS. The compliance with and enforcement of the provisions of the NEMA and the CMAS will be made easier. The NEMA and the CMAS alignment with the Constitution will be increased. The alignment between pieces of environmental legislation will also be increased. There will be better protection of South Africa's natural infrastructure, which is often taken for granted, and unfortunately all too often have been destroyed through unsustainable development and replaced with inferior man-made infrastructure. Section 24 of the Constitution will thus be served better, especially with regards to the protection of our natural resources for future generations. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So in summary, the provincial department supports the amendments of the bill. Let me allow then the stakeholders to make their inputs. Ngithatha lethuba ke nginikezela ebantwini abakhona emhlanganweni abafuna ukuphawula, abafuna ukuphefumula kulo mthetho ohlongozwayo, okanye banombuzo ongacacanga kahle. Mhlambe kukhona bangakhonanga ukuthola ithuba loku-attenda i-workshop, bafuna ukubuza ukuthi lo mthetho kahle usisiza ngani thina singabantu base-Gauteng. Besicelile ke ukuthi lo mthetho utranslatewe ngesisuthu. Laba bafuna i-document ezokwenziwa ngesisuthu bangayicela, uMamLebu uzobanikeza. Besicele nokuthi yenziwe nangesizulu, bathi bazasenzela. Besicele nokuthi yenziwe nangesitshonga. Sicelile ke nokuthi basenzele amakhophi awu-2 or awu-3 we-braille, ukuze sikwazi ukuthi sixhumane nalaba abangakwazi ukufunda ngale ndlela thina sonke sifunda ngayo. So abazofuna i-bill etranslatiwe, sizocela ke ukuthi bafake isicelo kuMamLebu, then sizokwazi ukuthi sibasendele leyo document. Ngicela ke ukuthi lesikhathi samanje sinikezele ke laba abafuna ukuphawula. uzosho igama lakho nenhlangano obuya kuyo nokuthi mhlambe uphuma kweyiphi region. Engizokucela ke bantu abadala ngendaba yesikhathi ngicela singaphindaphindi osokushiwo umunye. Uma besibakukhulumile lokho bofuna ukukhuluma ngicela ungaphindaphindi. Ngiyabonga ke ngaloko ukunikezela abantu ithuba. I'm allowing the stakeholders who want to comment, input, make submission to do that now. This is the opportunity. May I note hands, those who want to speak?
Chairperson.
Bakhona abantu bafuna ukuphawula kulo umthetho ohlongozwayo?
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, this is Reverend Hololo from Greater Johannesburg, FBO. Unfortunately, I don't know when was the workshop. We didn't attend the workshop. So I just wanted to check if ever there's any way of submission after this meeting, because somehow myself is the first time I see the bill, because I only got the bill last night. So can we submit outside this meeting?
Thank you very much, Reverend, for that. Yes, you can submit outside this meeting. Label will indicate as to by the latest submission, we're expecting it by when. But we will appreciate if we can receive all those submissions, the latest by next week, Wednesday. It can be in English, it can be in isiZulu, it can be in Setswana, any language that you're comfortable with, you can make that submission. 2, you can also send a WhatsApp if you want, if you are comfortable within WhatsApp, you can send a WhatsApp to Label, and we will capture that submission. Any other person wants to contribute at this stage?
Thank you so much.
Ukhona omunye ofuna ukuphawula okwanamhlanje njengoba sila kulo mhlangano?
Yes, leadership. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, leader. It's Mordecai over here, Flenny Youth Business Council. Firstly, I'd like to ask if we could please be afforded the document again. We also didn't receive it, and also the timeline document that speaks to the measures of where we need to submit and when to submit. I'll be sitting with my committee tonight to compile our recommendations. So we just asking if we could please get that. We didn't get the full document, so I'm asking Usis Lebu, and as well, can we also have the number Yaga Sis Lebu, so that we can also communicate with her online as well? That would be so great. Thank you so much. I submit.
Thank you very much. I think the information will be provided. So to all stakeholders who are here, if you are requesting for the document, please indicate to Label. They will send the document. As I indicated, if you prefer the bill to be in Zulu, Sesotho, or Tsonga, please indicate the document will be sent to you. So our deadline for submission is next week, Wednesday. And I think we will share Label and Sisnoz's contact at the end of today's session. May I again check, is there anyone who wants to make an input on the bill or on the proposed areas in the bill? Ukhona ofuna ukuphawula ngaphambi kokuthi ngidlulele kuloko item elandelayo?
Thank you, Chairperson. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we are speaking to Pastor Musunkutu. I just want to say, in relation to Joburg FBO, can you please send all the documentation to Pastor Hololo, our secretary? So everything should be sent to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor Musunkutu. I think Label will do that. They will send all the documents to Pastor Hololo. And also we'll be expecting your submissions then by next week, Wednesday. Thank you very much, Mtomtan.
Okay.
Okay.
Ngicela ukubuza ke emhlanganweni ukhona omunye ofuna ukukhomenta okanye thina sonke silinde ukuthi sithole ama-document siwafunde yale njengeyinhlangano bese sesiyakwazi ukuphawula. Ukhona umuntu engingamvalela ngaphandle namuhla ofuna ukukhuluma la njengoba sikhona manje emhlanganweni?
Yebo,
Thank you, Chair. Ngizoba
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Cynthia Sekobela from...
Can you switch off your video?
My name is Cynthia Sekobela from Zirbecom. I just wanted to know yesterday I raised, and I'm sorry, on the workshop, I raised a question, and it was like a concern, and I was asked to write a submission. And I don't know whether that will form the group that will be attended on Wednesday next week or not.
You can submit today if you are ready, Ms. Mololo. May I request all participants, if you are not speaking, please switch off your video. You'll only switch on your video when you are given an opportunity to speak. Mayor Cynthia Sekobela, please make your submission.
Yes, I've already done it.
Oh, you have submitted in writing?
Yes, I've submitted to Lebu via email.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. It will be captured then.
Okay, thank you.
Ukhona omunye mhlambe singamvaleli ngaphandle?
Thokoza Chairperson.
Thokozani Madodana.
Thokoza, ngikho Pepsile from Traditional Healers Organization, Chair. Chair, besicela ukuthi silethe ngaphambili isubmission yethu. Isubmission yethu, Chair, on the proposed bill, lena ye-environment, ye-natural environmental management laws amendment bill. Okokuqala nje singakusho, Chair, ngokuthi sibonga kakhulu ukuthi i-department izame ukuthi kube ne-realignment and nekuklarifya kangcono imisebenzi yama-departments ahlukene alandelayo. I-department ye-environment, ye-mineral resources, ye-energy and water. Ngoba esikhathini esiningi besizithola sesi-caught up njengabantu abasebenzisa izihlahla zesintu futhi abasebenza ngomhlaba, nabantu futhi ababuye babe nothando lokuthi babuye benze ezinye izinto ezihambisana ne-energy. So uku-realigna lama-departments, ngicabanga ukuthi Chairperson sibona ukuthi kuzasisiza kakhulu. Kodwa-ke Chair, sicela ukuthi phinde siphawule nganako okulandelayo. Sicela ukusho, Chair, ukuthi kulama terminologies noma definitions abekiwe, besicela ukungeza nawa alandelayo, Chair. Chair, besicela ukungeza kokuthi asekudefine kube clear kokuthi yini i-indigenous community. Ngoba esikhathini esiningi uye uthole ukuthi lama departments ayakukhuluma kodwa ukubona kuba loose ukukhuluma kangangoba nasesikhuluma kakhulu ngendaba ye-beneficiation. Ngila khona ubona khona kokuthi kusho ukuthi i-definition yako ayicacanga kahle, Chair. Okwesibili esicela ukuthi kube part of the terminologies ezidefinwayo ileya ye-equitable. Kusho ukuthini ukuba equitable? Ngabe ukuba equitable, okay, maybe singabeki ngaleyo ndlela, kodwa-ke sicela ukuthi sike sidefinelwe njengabantu abansundu futhi abantu abahlala endaweni eziswele esifise ukubona sifuqulwa ngulo mnyango we-environment ne-fisheries and forestry. And then okunye ubani u-disadvantaged community, sicela ukuthi babuye basicacisele lapho ngoba uhamba ungathi kuye bese kuyalahleka. Yini i-biotrade? Abobani abantu aba-affectwa into ye-biotrade? Into ye-relief. Siyafisa ukuthi i-department lena icacise kahle into ye-relief because siyibone kakhulu, Chair, isishaya njengoba bekunale nto ye-COVID. Kokuthi indlela abacabanga i-relief siyibone as if abakwazi ukuyicabangela indlu yabantu abansundu. Sonke isikhathi nabantu abasebenza umsebenzi o-informal kule industry ye-traditional medicine. So sicela ukuthi bake basicacisele ukuthi how exactly do they define the word, the terminology, relief. And then okulandelayo Chair, indaba ye-Environmental Management Beneficiation Fund. Thina-ke njengabelaphi bendabuko, ikakhumbi ka-THO besicabanga ngokuthi kuzocaciswa into yokuthiwa nakukhulunywa nge-beneficiation fund njengoba esinye isikhathi siyibonile ukuthi ibuye ipropose nakweminye imithetho esizawukhuluma ngayo futhi namhlanje ntambama, namhlanje midday. So sifuna uku-understanda ngokuthi nakukhulunywa nge-beneficiation fund Chair, unini khona la khona umphakathi uye ungenelele and kunini la khona i-department ibonakala i-engage le public ekuthenini iy'mali sezikweletiwe imali engaka and zisetshenziswa kanjani to beneficiate the indigenous communities okanye rural communities kuze ukuthi phela sibonakale kokuthi uma ngabe kunezimbiwa noma imithi yethu ezisetshenziswa ngongqowankulu ku-bioprospecting asibone phela ukuthi bese kufuquka lamaphandle esihlala kuwona. Kodwa-ke into yale fund ibuye ingasicaceli kahle, sicela ukuthi kule department nabasibhizi benza le-area alignment nalokuthi balungise ezinye izinto, sicela ukuthi kuye kulungiswe leyo nto. Okunye esicela ukuthi kufakwe as part of i-definition Chair, indaba ye-amnesty. Uma ngabe ubuka i-NEMLA Act, National Environmental Management, National Environmental Management and Biodiversity Act Chair, okungomunye umthetho abathi bafuna ukuthi uri-align-we. Indaba ye-amnesty ayikhulunywa kangako kithi thina njengabelaphi bendabuko abahamba baye ehlathini bayokweleka imithi, abathethe iminyaka bazama ukuthi babuke after i-environment nekwekuthi futhi sibe nesiqiniseko sokuthi ayitholakali imosheka le-environment because i-part of i-ecosystem yethu. Kodwa lena khuluma nge-amnesty, uminister unikeza kuphela ongqowankulu basale abelaphi ngaso sonke isikhathi kuthiwe sebaboshiwe manje, sebenziwe ini manje. So siyacela ukuthi kube kubhekisiswe lokho and sikusho futhi nalokho mangabe ubheke kulo mthetho lona Chair, ku-section 11 sibhale ukuthi lana this would also make reference to the demand for the application of both the licenses and permits. Kusho ukuthi sifuna ukuthi mangabe kukhulunywa ngento ekhulunywa nge-license noma i-permit abuye phela kubhekelelwe ngoba thina singabelaphi bendabuko uma ubhekile wonke lama-department esebenza nawo afuna kube ney'mali esizikhokhayo. U-health uney'mali ezibekile, u-environment uney'mali azibekile, i-science and innovation kanjalo. Akukho i-departments esendlula kuyo singakhokhiswa imali. Lezo zinto lezo zenza ukuthi kube nzima kanti phela i-environmental affairs besithi ayisincephezelise phela, isinikeze i-amnesty kokuthi okay nina belaphi bendabuko for a period of so many years angeke nikwazi ukuthi nibhadare ama-permits ngoba nisebenzile vele umsebenzi wokuyinakekela imvelo. Angikhuluma abantu abagangayo abemba izinto eziningi benze lento abayibiza nge-biotrade esithi abayichazisise. Sikhuluma nje ngabelaphi abambela lo muntu loyo abasuke bamlapha ngaleso sikhathi, which is different from making biotrade or making the business of traditional medicine. And then Chair sisesilungisela ukuqeda sitheke singakujabulela Chair nokuthi igama ku-page number 3 line 3 kube kukhazisiswe ngoba kunegama elibizwa ngokuthiwa i-holder bese kunegama elibizwa ngokuthiwa i-holder I think i-holder for environmental something. I think umuntu ofuna ukube uye wenza i-inspection and all of that. So legama elithiwa i-holder siyibona ngathi libekiwe nje alichazwa kahle lele holder lele duzane naleli kule line number 3. So asichazelwe kahle ukuthi ngabe legama le-holder liyasithinta inathi ngoba sizawusuke singakhulumi ngalo and yet lizasithinta in the long run. Chair, lokunye Chair lesicela ukuthi sibe sikubukisise kahle ukuthi sitheke it would also help if the roles of the ministers are clearly defined. Okay, lokhu sekusho the ministers of health and minister of environment are clearly defined kulo mthetho lo musha ngoba sibona for instance kunesihlahla esisebenzisa kakhulu thina belaphi bendabuko esisibiza nge-cannabis. Silapha abantu ngazi ifuba, sisiza abantu abane-anxiety, kuningi nje kakhulu che. Kodwa-ke nasibhekile sibona ungazi ukuthi lesihlahla and ubona mawubuka amaphandle afana nabo-Pondoland, abo-Mpumalanga, i-Northern Limpopo, i-Northern KwaZulu-Natal, cishe ama-province amaningi ahlukahlukene nabo-Bushbuckridge. Kuyabonakalisa ukuthi lesihlahla siyazimilela nje. And uma ngabe kungeke kuqaqiswe kokuthi i-environment yona isibekaphi ngalesihlahla nezinto zabo-beneficiation, sicabanga ukuthi sizawuluza from ukuthi kukwazi ukusetshenziswa lesihlahla lesi ekuthenini kufuqule abantu abafana nathi abanganalutho, and yet abongqokankulu baqhubeke bahlomule basebenzisa wona lama-permits nalama-licenses. So siyacela ukuthi ase ingenelelwe i-environment into le ye-cannabis. Futhi-ke sithe masikhuluma siyi-THO savuma kokuthi i-cannabis obviously it is naturalized in the country, it is not an indigenous crop. Kodwa-ke phela if it's naturalized i-affecta le miphakathi eminingi ngoba iza nemali eningi ezoza nayo and izimilela nje widely kwezinye indawo njengoba bese sikubalile che. Sesiceda-ke che nyana. Sithe kulokhu lokukhulunywa kule department nge-powers of police. Sithe kuyasethusa kakhulu uma ngabe sekuzawulethwa amaphoyisa e-SAPS, hayi amaphoyisa e-Scorpion labawo, ngoba sibonile ukuthi sihlukumezwa kangakanani amaphoyisa. Ngoba uma ngabe ungabhekisisa nje into abayenze eFaraday, eMaye, kwaNongoma, eThekwini ngalesikhathi lese-COVID, kube ukuhlukumeza okumangalisayo and abachubekayo bakwenze. Kanti uma bengathi bona bazawuchubeka basebenzise amaphoyisa abo ekuthenini benze zonke lezi zinto zabo-investigation, sicabanga ukuthi zabo ku-assessa kwenza zonke izinto kubhekisisa nje izinto, bese-ke nangabe sekuthiwa kuya-reinforcwa, meaning in this case we are meaning i-reinforcement in as far as kuthiwa sekuboshwa-ke umuntu uyiswe enkantolo. Ngila khona-ke sithi amaphoyisa kangenelele lapho, kodwa kungatholakali ukuthi sekubhizi iphoyisa seliloku liyangihlukumeza, liyangithululisa, liyangibhakishisa, and yet bona bathi banawo phela lama-green scorpions okungamaphoyisa wabo. Why kungasebenziswa wona? Lokunye-ke esikubukile asesiyaceda che ungasipheleli ungamangani. Che okunye sithe we-agree that
inkinga yami mntakababa yisikhathi.
Ngiyabona che
umthetho kufuneka siwuxoxe futhi. Umthetho ngifuna ukuthi lokho okhuluma ngabo ingakho ubhalile yini phansi. Ngibona ngathi uyahohlela ngokulandelana. Uma kubhaliwe phansi ongasenzela kona ukuthi sikwazi ukuthi kunikeze ulebu sizokwazi ukukapture ngoba kokunye phela kufanele ngiphinde ngibanikeze nethuba nabo kwezinye izinto ozibuzile bakwazi ukuzichaza kwanamhlanje before sihlukana.
Che bothi ngifaka ukugcina ngoma uthi asale ngiphumula che.
Kuseloku kodwa nje.
Okukodwa che wami.
Fake mntakamali okukodwa.
Ngiyabonga che. Sitheke che lana sithi siyavumelana kakhulu sithi we agree that a permission be denied for mining in conservation areas. However, there is need for the responsible department to ensure that the responsible department, in this case we are referring to environment, to ensure that jobs are created in areas of conservation. Sikhulumela ke lana lama national parks bokuthi akungatholakali ukuthi abantu sebayalamba and yet bahlala adjacent to these parks. Kodwa ke kungasabi nokunakeleleka kwabantu. So nangabe bathi bona kungamayinwa esivumelayo vele nathi. Sithi kodwa kube nekhotha abanikezwa yona kwekuthi ngalesikhathi lesi yiba semqasha abantu abangaka abavela kuleyo mphakathi. In that way sicabanga ukuthi kuzawusiza kakhulu ekuthenini kusize i-unemployment esibona ngendlela emangalisayo kangaka. Che siyabonga kakhulu Thokozani.
Thank you very much for the submission. I'm going to give the department just to clarify on a few words that have been asked the meaning. But some of the meaning is not a matter of the department. I think it's a matter of the Constitution, the way they are written in the Constitution. But let me allow the department to respond, then we'll move to the next item. My challenge is that we still have the second law, the second bill, that we must deal with. That is why we emphasize the issue of the pre-workshop, so that today we only receive those submissions which are ready. Then give the department to clarify on certain questions which were posed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, members and members of the public for the questions posed. I think with my limited understanding and following of the questions that were raised, I will try to respond. I think, Honourable Chairperson, you are correct. Many of these issues are not so much issues that we touch on in the NEMA Laws Amendment Act, and I think probably when we deal with the Forest Amendment Act, we will find the same kind of situation where the issues on the ground are not necessarily issues that we are addressing in the Act or in the amendment to the Act that we are presenting today. I think specifically in relation to the general principle of what is defined and what isn't defined, it's only if the terminology is used in the legislation that there's a necessity to define it if it is not clear what the term should be referring to. And I think many of the issues that are raised as issues of concern are probably terms that are potentially used in other pieces of legislation or potentially in the subordinate legislation that fall under the NEMA or the specific Environmental Management Acts. So, for instance, issues around Indigenous communities, the whole issue around biotrade and beneficiation, these things are unpacked to a large extent in some of the regulations that we have under the Biodiversity Act, and we can certainly look at written submissions in this respect and try to also respond to these issues, even though it doesn't relate to anything that we are introducing necessarily in this amendment bill. I think just on the issue of amnesty, I think I've been involved in this in the department, and if there is concern around this issue, I'm happy to engage on a one-on-one and more direct level on these matters with the community that is concerned about this. Maybe just to also talk about the terminology, the holder of an environmental authorization or the holder of a mining right or mining permit. I think we are trying very much to explain this in the legislation. There's a whole transitional period that had happened where mining wasn't previously provided for in the National Environmental Management Act or in the regulations. It was provided for in terms of the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act. And we had to provide for the terminology that was used previously in the old legislation and that have now moved into the NEMA, for instance. So we are really trying to say that if you are the holder of a right or a permit, that would refer to if you had obtained a prospecting right or a mining right or a mining permit under the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act. And since 8 December 2014, the One Environmental System was introduced where we were trying to align the roles and mandates of the Minerals Minister and the Environment Minister, as well as the environmental MECs in the 9 provinces. And since December 2014, if you wanted to obtain a mining right or a mining permit under the minerals regime, you would also then require an environmental authorization under the environmental legislation. So I do appreciate the fact that these are complex matters and the definitions are sometimes very difficult to understand. Again, we would like to see the comments in more detail to see to what extent we can potentially unpack them and make it better understandable for people to understand what we are dealing with here. Just also to say that these are, I don't think it's new terminology that is being introduced. I think there are provisions around the mining environment space that we are amending in the bill, but these provisions have been in place since December 2014, some of them at least. I think the role of the environmental management inspectors or the green scorpions, we are not always aware what is happening on the ground, and unfortunately it is true that there is cases of harassment by the SAPS, and why don't we send in green scorpions? I think we obviously in government, we have capacity issues and we can't always be physically present where it's necessary. But I do believe we have contact details to make us aware of these cases, and perhaps that is the solution to be found, that perhaps we should engage on specific instances and engage a little bit more one-on-one also on these aspects. Chairperson, I don't know if you want me to respond in more detail to any of these issues, or whether you want to move on to your to the next item on the agenda.
No, you'll not respond to all of them. The purpose was for the submission. So the submission will be noted and submitted. I think as the committee, as we'll be dealing with the submission, in each submission we'll look as to which department needs to further respond, especially on areas that are not in the bill. So we'll forward you all the submissions. We'll forward the department in the province all the submissions. So where there are areas where we need to respond, we will respond. However, Thokozani bantu abadala, sizule nesikhalo sokuhlukunyezwa ngamaphoyisa. I think sisinothile, mara ngiyacabanga ukuthi kuzofuneka sibe nolunye uhlelo lokudila ngaleyo ndawo yokuhlukunyezwa ngamaphoyisa, ngoba leyo ayisiphathi yalana namuhla. But ngiyangithande ukuthi kufuneka sazi ukuthi iGauteng Provincial Legislature inekomiti elibizwa nge-Petitions Committee. Uma sinezikhalo okanye uma sihlukunyezwa uhulumende okanye abantu abasebenzela uhulumende, le committee leli lingasisiza kakhulu ekutheni sibhale izikhalo zethu bese sesiyazisubmit. Ngikuzwe kakhulu na ukhala ngendaba yaseFaraday, indaba yakaMayimayi ukuthi kunokuhlukumezeka okukhona kwamaphoyisa. So ngicabanga ukuthi mhlambe sizayenza ilanga okanye singashare, ngoba inamba yami izaba khona, uLebo ukhona, sikwazi ukusiza abantu abahlukunyezwa amaphoyisa ukuthi bakwazi ukubhala lama petition bawathumele legislature, sizokwazi ukusizeka. Okunye futhi engikuzwile indaba yokuthi indaba le ye-relief isebenza kanjani, ekakhulu njengoba besiphuma kulolu daba lwe-COVID-19. Sikunothe kakhulu ke lokhu, saxoxa nayo i-department ukuthi sibonile ukuthi le relief ekakhulu ngathi isize abantu phecelezi abame kahle, ngoba nathi siyabheka sichaza ngokuthi abantu abafana nama-traditional healers abahleli kaMayimayi, abahleli eFaraday, labo bantu labo abakho registered. So abantu abangekho registered ilabantu esibabiza ngama-informal traders. Ekubanzima ke ukuthi ugovernment abanikeze imali ke labo bantu labo. Kodwa siyaxoxisana ke ne-department, sixoxile futhi nabo kakhulu. Ngiyathemba ukuthi kumhlangano esizoba nawo la sicelile i-department ukuthi sicela beze bazosichazela, ekakhulu i-department yala e-province, bazosichazela ukuthi abobani ababasizile ngale mali ye-relief ku-COVID. And sibabuzile futhi nalapho ukuthi basichazele ukuthi bawongakhi abantu abakuma-informal traders ababasizile. So nalapho ke ngiyacabanga ukuthi umhlangano loyo usazoba khona, sixoxisane ngaloko ke kakhulu. Ukunothile ke nokunye okubhaliwe, disadvantaged community, equitable. I think okunye singaxoxa ke lokho ngoba izinto ezibhaliwe ke leso. Bengicela ke bantu abadala, if you will allow me that we move to the next bill. Ngoba the next bill also nayo funeka sinikeze isikhathi siyixoxe nayo sizokwazi ukuthola ama-submission. Uma une-submission ungakhulumanga la namhlanje, ngicela siforwardele uSisilebu okanye singayifaka i-submission yethu ku-chat njengoba ngichazile, singayifaka na ku-WhatsApp. uSisilebu uthi kimi ucela ama-submissions wonke abe khona siwathole ngeyi-5 zaka-October. If you allow me, honorable members, can we move then to the next bill? I'm going to allow or to request the National Department again to present. My request again is that let us not read the document word by word. Let us give an executive summary. 1, because there was a pre-workshop, and 2, we're still going to send the document to all the stakeholders here to allow them enough time to look at the document and make the submissions to the committee before the 5th of October. Over to you.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Sorry, Shumani, let me just introduce you to the Honourable Chairperson and the members. Ms. Shumani Zivani will be taking us through the presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, honourable members, members of the public and colleagues from the department. I'm going to take you through the amendment bill, National Forest Act Amendment Bill. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, I can see it. I hope also other members and the stakeholders are able to see it.
Thank you.
Over to you then.
Thank you, Chair. Now, the focus of my presentation today, I will focus on the purpose, the objective of the bill, the process followed that far in amending this piece of legislation, the clause by clause, whereby I will summarize as the chairperson has already indicated, and then lastly, the implication of this bill. The purpose of this presentation, as the chair has already indicated, is to brief the public on the National Forest Amendment Bill, that is B11 of 2016, which seeks to amend the National Forest Act, Act 84 of 1998. The purpose of this act, the National Forest Act, is to promote sustainable forest management and to protect certain forests and trees. This act, Chairperson and members of the public, is also known as the Balancing Act because it balances between use and protection in order to ensure sustainable management of forest. The minister authorized consumptive use. Consumptive use is where people remove or can consume product or produce from the forest, such as cutting down of tree, collecting mushrooms, and collecting barks for medicinal plants. So the minister authorized this consumptive use through various mechanisms, such as through Section 19 that deals with the access. In terms of Section 19 of this Act, everyone has a reasonable access to state forests for purpose of recreational, educational, cultural, or spiritual purposes subject to this Act, and also through license. Our license are issued in terms of Section 7. Section 7 deals with natural forest, 15 that deals with protected trees, and 23 that deals with activities in a state forest. And also through exemption in terms of Section 24(6), whereby communities, members of the communities, they are exempted to collect natural resources such as medicinal herbs, mushrooms, grass for thatching, for household purposes, and also community forestry agreement, amongst others. This act has been amended twice, 2001 and 2005. We are currently working on our third amendment. The reason is that during the past two amendments, gaps were identified, and you will agree with me, legislation is not static. It moves with time. And also we realize that there is a need for improvement on existing section, and also to make the legislation more responsive to the operational realities and the challenges on the ground. So the objective of this bill are to provide for clear definitions, for example, terms such as natural forests and woodland, and also to provide for public trusteeship of the nation forestry resources, and to increase the promotion and enforcement of sustainable forest management, and increase the measures provided for in the Act to control and remedy deforestation, and also to provide for appeals against decisions taken under delegated powers and duties when issuing licenses, and reinforcement offenses and penalties, and lastly, promote equity by inclusion of youth and women in the National Forest Advisory Council, known as the NFA. The department has followed all the legislative process for amending the Act. We have conducted various consultations with the public and other interested and affected stakeholders, whereby the bill was presented to members of the public, and the bill was also published in the Government Gazette. The bill was then served before Parliament and tabled at the National Assembly for their consideration, and then taken to the NCOP, because this is a 76 bill that affects provinces for their consideration. Hence, we are here today conducting this public hearing. I will then take you through the clause by clause of this bill. I will try my best to summarize the intention of this bill. In terms of clause 1, the bill intended to broaden the definition of a natural forest. Currently, the Act defines a natural forest as a group of indigenous trees whose crowns are largely contiguous. So the intention of the bill is to broaden the definition of a natural forest so as to include all vegetation within natural forests, for example, grassland, thickets, shrubs, and understory. The next one, the bill intends to simplify and broaden the definition in order to cater for the situation where woodland may be degraded. The Act defines woodland as a group of indigenous trees which are not natural forests but whose crown cover at least 5% they occupy, and which may in a degraded state have their own crown cover of less than 5%. The next one is the bill intended to provide for the establishment of the public trusteeship of the nation forest resources under Section 2A. It's a new insertion in order to clarify where these forest resources are to be managed, which is at the national level. Clause 3 is the bill intended to amend Section 7. Section 7, as I've already indicated, deals with natural forest. The bill intended to broaden the provision of Section 7 to include all vegetation within the natural forest, such as grassland, thicket, and shrub, and the understory. The next one is still under amendment of Section 7 by inserting subsection 5 in order to provide for the directive to rectify damage by the minister in the case of non-compliance with the provisions of Section 7 when dealing with the prohibition of destruction of a natural forest. Clause 3 is still an amendment of Section 7 by insertion of subsection 6 in order to provide for steps to be taken in the case of non-compliance with the directive issued in terms of Section 7.5. Clause 4 is an amendment of Section 8 by inserting a new subsection 3, in order to prohibit any activity in a protected area so that the purpose of the protected area is not defeated. So the proposal is that a person may not conduct any activity in a protected area which is inconsistent with the conservation. Clause 5 is an amendment of Section 14 by insertion of subsection 6. Section 14 deals with emergency protection. The intention of the bill is to provide the minister with powers to terminate any activities such as cutting of trees that may need to be protected while we are still conducting investigations. Clause 6 is an amendment of Section 15. Section 15 deals with protected trees. The bill intends to amend Section 15. Currently, in terms of Section 15, the minister must publish the list of protected trees annually in the Gazette and 2 newspapers circulating nationally. The proposal is that the minister must publish that list of all species protected under Section 12, not annual, but at least every 5 years or when there is a need. Sorry, my apology. I don't know where I've pressed. Okay, my apology for that. As I continue, clause 7 is an amendment of section 17 by insertion of subsection 13. Section 17 deals with control forest area. The bill intends to provide the minister with emergency powers to declare a controlled forest area in order to prevent continued deforestation. For example, most of the time, you find that the forest is deforested prior to the declaration due to the process being lengthy. Clause 8 is a continuation of addition of subsection 14 under section 17 of the Principal Act in order to provide the minister with powers to issue a directive in the case of non-compliance. Clause 9, it's an amendment of section 723 by inserting new subsection 4. Section 23, as I've already indicated, deals with activities in a state forest. The bill intends to prohibit mining activities in a state forest in order to promote sustainable forest management. Clause 10, it's an amendment under section 34 in order to insert new subsection. Section 34 of the Principal Act deals with the National Forest Advisory Council. The National Forest Advisory Council is established in terms of this section. This is the council that advises the minister on any matter related to forestry. So the intention of the bill is for the inclusion of youth and women in the National Forest Advisory Council. Clause 11 is amendment of section 35 still under the NFA in order to address the issue of remunerating the NFA members when attending the council. Within this NFA, there are 2 committees that are established in terms of the NFA, the Committee on Sustainable Forest Management and the Committee for Access. So the bill intends to ensure that both the committee and the subcommittee are remunerated when attending the meetings. Amendment of section 37(3) is under clause 12. It's there to provide for the extension of the time period that the council needs to advise the minister on issues emanating from the council meetings. Currently, the chairperson of the council must provide the minister with advice or information emanating from any meeting. Currently, it's 2 weeks. The proposal is that within a period not exceeding 1 month after the date of the said meeting. Clause 13 is an amendment of, it's a new insertion in order to provide for appeal procedure against a decision taken by a delegated officer. Clause 14 is an amendment of section 58(6) in order to strengthen enforcement specifically for offence committed in relation to major development. The bill intends to increase the fifth category offence referred to in section 61 to a fine not exceeding 10 million or for a period of up to or imprisonment for a period of 10 years or both fine and such imprisonment. It's moving from 50,000 to 10 million. Clause 15 is an amendment of section 65. In terms of section 65, the Director General may designate posts in the department or in any provincial administration or local authority whose incumbents are forest officer and appoint any other suitable qualified person as forest officer. So the bill is intending to bring C and D, that the Director General may also determine different levels of forest officers and determine qualifications criteria for forest officers. So lastly, Chairperson, honorable members and members of the public, the implication of this bill, as you know, the mandate of the National Forest Act is listed under Schedule 4 of the Constitution. So this caused the bill to be tagged as Section 76 bill in terms of the Constitution. Therefore, the proposed amendment is aiming to strengthen the provisions for promoting sustainable forest management and not to change the current administrative processes of the functional areas listed in Schedule 4. Therefore, the proposed amendment will not affect the current provincial mandate with regard to management of the forest or the protection of certain trees. The Principal Act, as I've already indicated in the beginning, already has various mechanisms to promote the use of forests for the benefits of all. These have not been affected by these proposed amendments. Thank you very much, Chairperson, members of the public and honorable members for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much for the detailed presentation. And honorable members, let me allow the provincial department to give us their views on this scheme.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. If I can ask Mr. Claudio Munyani, who is assisting with sharing, if we can go to the last two slides as it contains the executive summary of the provincial presentation. Yes, Chair, as per your request, I suggest that we go to the last two slides as it contains the executive summary to also save us some time, with your permission.
Yes. You can do that.
Mr. Munyani? Yes, can we maybe go to slide 28, Mr. Munyani? Ah, 27, sorry, I apologize. Slide number 27. Thank you. I also want to thank Mr. Munyani, who's the GDART Chief Director, who's assisting with sharing the slides. My computer dates back to very ancient, many years ago. Yes, as I've said, this is just an executive summary of some general points from the provincial department side. As have been mentioned before, the administration of indigenous forests is listed in Part A of Schedule 4 of the Constitution. The proposed amendments are aiming to strengthen the provisions for promoting sustainable forest management. The proposed amendments will not affect the current provincial mandate with regards to management of forests, as just been mentioned by the presenter. The NFA already has various mechanisms to promote the sustainable use of forests for the benefit of all. These provisions have not been affected by these proposed amendments. Yes, in general, the provisions of this amendment bill is supported. Mr. Bunyani, can we please go to the next slide? As one of the reasons why we are in support is because it will eliminate many of the current interpretation issues. The compliance and enforcement of this legislation will be made easier. Once again, there's greater alignment between the National Forestries Amendment Bill and the Constitution and other legislation. Once again, this bill will also serve to protect South Africa's natural infrastructure better, as it is often taken for granted, and it also have been, to some extent, have been compromised by unsustainable development. So it will also serve to it will also serve Section 24 of the Constitution much better through the amendments that are proposed in the amendment bill. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody that was listening. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much also for the presentation of the provincial department's view, and I get it that you are supporting the bill. Esichazayo okanye akuchazayo la ukuthi akenzanga ipresentation ephelele ngoba ipresentation yakhe masiyibheka ibill uzophinda lokho sekushiwo i-National Department. So i-slides lezi eziwu-2 akhuluma ngazo ukhuluma nje kafishane ukuthi bayawusupporta bona lo mthetho ohlongozwayo ngoba uzobanceda ekutheni umonitoreke lama-national forest. Honorable members, I'm going to allow stakeholders an opportunity to ask questions and make submissions on this amendment bill. Again, members, we had our opportunity where the provincial department and the national made their presentation, but also as members of the committee, we will have the opportunity again to engage the department once we've captured and finalized the submissions and when we are dealing with our mandate in terms of the submission to the NCOP. Ngicela-ke kulesikhathi samanje ke ngivumele-ke abantu abafuna ukuphawula okanye bafuna ukubuza imibuzo kuloko okuhlongozwayo kulo mthetho. Siphinde futhi sicele ukuthi uma ozokusho sekukhulunyiwe ngaphambili ngenxa yesikhathi sicela singaphindaphindi. Ngiphinde futhi ngicele ukuthi uma okwenu senikubhalile phansi sizocela nikunikeze noma ubaba uDlomo lo besinaye ku-workshop okunguyodila nge-public participation, singazinikeza noma usisilebu ngoba singazinikeza noma usisinozi. Mara-ke okwanamhlanje ngicela nje ukuthi abafuna ukuphawula-ke ngibanikeze ithuba kulesikhathi samanje. I'm allowing stakeholders an opportunity to make their input or submission. Ukhona ofuna ukuqala? Anyone who's ready?
Honorable member, Plakis is ready.
Yes, Mr. Plakis, over to you.
Yeah, Dr. Plakis, yes, this is Mr. Honorable Plakis from ACDB. I have an input on this issue of environmental conservation, nature conservation, and environmental preservation. In terms of like when I checked in our schooling days, the environmental preservations and nature conservation, it was part of our educational structure and curriculum. And we developed the love of nature conservation and the plantation of trees in our schools and around our environment as a community. But today, our local parks, they are dilapidated and vandalized. So it's the new order of the day. So I'm trying to ask in terms of this law, then of which I can get an answer on, is how to cultivate the awareness of nature and environmental conservation in our schools, and some practical types of schools adopt, then how to adopt the education of the 3 R's. Sorry for that. The 3 R's in our schools to reduce waste and to reuse resources and to recycle materials. So this is my only way in terms of how should the law be implemented in our local communities, I mean. So these are the ones of which, especially on terms of our schooling. So this is my question, and this I like to get a clarification how to cultivate the environmental awareness in our schools to get it back to the schooling curriculum. Thank you.
Thokozani. Hello.
Chair, your mic is off.
Please unmute, Chair.
We don't hear you, Chairperson.
Babu Chauke, I was giving Babu Chauke ithuba lokukhuluma ngoba ngibona evelile ngathi ufuna ukukhuluma manje ngibona ngathi uchwepheshe lumshaya njengami. Babu Chauke sewulungile ukuthi ungakhuluma? Okay, Babu Chauke nakasacofa. Is there any other person who's ready to make an input? Singanikezela bona. Babu Chauke saphinde simnike ithuba. Anyone who wants to make a comment or submission? Thokozani Koko Pepsile sinikeza isikhathi ke bakaMaseko.
Thokoza Chair, ngiyabonga kakhulu Chair. Ngibonga kakhulu kuwe Chair, ngibonga kakhulu nakubaholi bethu abasiphethe zonke indlondlo. Angazi ukuthi Chair uyangizwa kahle. Zonke indlondlo angazi.
Ngikuzwa kahle mntane Khehle.
Thokoza Ngonyama. Chair, angeke sisakhuluma konke Chair ngoba ushilo wathi singandi kakhulu ngoba sibhalile phansi. Ngizakuhlonipha nje lokho Chair, kodwa ke engacela ukuthi ngicela ngikhulume i-introduction yethu mhlambe esicelayo ukuthi manje sikubone kungezwa. Esicelayo ukuthi manje kungezwe sithe mangabe ubheka i-preamble yalomthetho. I-preamble yemthetho lona uthi maybe asengifunze nje kancane Chair. Uthi the THO notes with disappointment and resentment the introduction of a bill meant only to promote and reinforce. We propose that the bill protect, promote, develop, and facilitate equitable sharing of economic derivatives from the commercial activities involved in natural forest. Thina ke lesikushoko ke mhlonishwa lana sithi kusiphatha kabi kakhulu sikuzwile ukuthi izikhulumi ezisithule lesicelo zithini ekuthenini sithi bathi already kukhona imithetho esikhona la okunje kokuthi kuchitshiyelwe indlela ethile yalomthetho lona we-national forest kodwa ke natural forest kodwa ke esikushoyo ukuthi mawukhuluma nge-natural forest ukhuluma ngomhlaba la khona kunezihlahla nje ezandile ezimilile endaweni sithe kulezo sihlahla lezo siyacela ukuthi akuphinde kufakwe phela into yokuthi akuprotectwe kungabhekwa kuphela ukupronyotwa kwazo nekuthi kudevelopwe and kufacilitatewe economic activity. Sikushiso lokho ekuthenini siyesaba ukuthi nangabe singabanikeza kokuthi babheke kuphela i-promotion ne-reinforcement kusho ukuthi sizasithola singabelaphi bendabuko much as bakushilo lokho kokuthi angeke kusi-affecte kakhulu kodwa-ke asikuthembi ngoba uma ubheka ku-section 7 Chair, i-section 7 ikubeka kucace kwekuthi uma utholakala udamage utholakala ukha to collect uyabeka nje izinto eziningi uzawuba senkingeni so asikuloko labakhuluma ngomlomo manje naloko okubhalwe phansi obviously kunalento yokuphikisana ngandlela thize so siyacela ukuthi kuze ukuthi sibonakalise ukuthi singabantu abanakelele imvelo for isikhathi eside ngoma lekunye futhi sikubeke kucace Chair ukuthi njengabelaphi bendabuko asisibona nje abantu bemvelo nje ukuthi sithanda ukubonakala sine flora and fauna but sithanda ukuthi bazi ukuthi imvelo iyi-part and parcel of i-ecosystem yethu kuyisikompilo nendlela zethu zonke kokuthi sikwazi ukuphila ngoba even ney'bongo zethu zinama-autonyms afaka phakathi iy'lwane ney'hlahla ezithize so bekungumsebenzi wethu njengabantu abansundu ngokuthi sizivikele lezi zinto akukho umuntu wafika kangako owasifundisa wabuya kwelinye ilizwe sabona kwekuthi asizibize ngamagama wethu ukuze ukuthi sizowazi ukuzinakekela kangcono of course-ke kukhona lo bugebengu obehle benzeka mhlawumbe nobudlabha-ke sengema-extreme areas lawo lokufanele ukuthi mhlawumbe-ke sikhulume sikhuzane ngawo and akunankinga kuloko kukhuzana kodwa-ke futhi bazi ukuthi besivele singabantu abayinakelelayo imvelo kangangoba bathi abafikayo bayifike bayithola siyinakelelekile sawuchubeka sikunakekele lokho okunye sifuna ukukubeka nje Chair ngokuthi sikhuluma lana ngabantu asengibekise nje ePalm Ridge amalunga wethu asePalm Ridge aney'mbuzi mangabe aney'mbuzi khona la eGauteng nabaney'mbuzi bazofuna i-pastoral land kulo mthetho Chair akucaci kahle ukuthi amadlelo abekwaphi ngoba kukhulunywa nje kuphela ngokuthi kuzawuvikelwa kuzawuthuthukiswa kubuye ku-reinforcwe kusho ukuthi lamalunga wethu anale mfuyo akaphephanga nomphakathi futhi awuphephanga uma ubuka kahle lo mthetho lona Chair ngizawuhamba nje Chair ngigijime ngoba nishilo nathi angikulethe umnumzane uDlomo nosisi uNozizwe angeke ngande kakhulu kodwa-ke ufuna sikusho-ke singayihlangano yabelaphi bendabuko kokuthi sithola kunzima Chair ukuthi sikhona ukuzwisisa kokuthi when and where does consumption for subsistence starts and where does commercialization begin and end kulo mthetho lona sicela ukuthi akuye kulungiswe phela lasekuhlelisiswa because njengoba sibanikeza le document esiyibhalile sifuna ukuthi sisize ukuthi kule dichotomy leyo ikwazi ukulungiseka leyo nto ngoba sizasithola sesenkingeni uhulumeni ubese uya-reinforce kwenze ngokuthi abantu bakithi bagcine sebeyiboshwa kunokokuthi babe yingxenye yokuthuthukisa imithetho nokufundisa ngemithetho yahulumeni okunye-ke sikufundayo lana-ke Chair ngokuthi umthetho lona uyakhuluma siyawuzwa uyakhuluma kahle kokuthi kuzaba nekomiti elizoluleka ungqongqoshe kodwa-ke kulo mthetho nawubheka u-B wakhona mhlambe ngiyayelo ukuthi nivule kakhulu ngoba kungenzeka ngizabe sengiyanibambezela che kanti phela songikhuzile. Mawubheka uB wakhona la khona kukhulunywa khona ngubhalile konke phansi che. La khona kukhulunywa khona ngekomiti. Akucaci lokuthi one representative will come from an indigenous community, from indigenous people or communities. Kodwa bakusho bona haphakathi baze bafaka kamnandi baze bathi kuzaba ngabantu besimame kube futhi nentsha. Kodwa-ke kule document akukho nasekubalwa abantu abazoba ingxenye kulabantu abathathu. Abekho labo bantu kuleyo document. Kuleyo section leyo lekhuluma ngokukhethwa kwekomiti. Sithi sinenkinga-ke lapho ukuthi kuyakhulunywa nje kwedluliso kodwa akufakwanga kulo mthetho. And yet ama-regulations azawuvela ngalo mthetho. So kusibangela inkinga lokho che. Che sesivala nje sicela ukuthi okunye esikusho la sithi the NEMLA Act makes similar promises and on the creation of a fund, and yet no one has ever publicly accounted to us as custodians and the country on how much monies were derived from the commercialization of natural resources. And yet, last yatshelwa ukuthi kuzoba negumbi lezawunakelela liphinde liluleke ungqongqoshe ekuthenini kubhekwe ukuthi amafa noma indlela ofuneka ihanjiswe ngayo lo msebenzi we-national forest uhanjiswa kanjani. Kodwa-ke siyabona futhi nokuthi kukhulunywa kakhulu ngezinto zabo-permits nabo-license. Asinankinga nabo ngoba siya-understanda ukuthi le business lehanjiswa ile department. Kodwa-ke phela nangabe kuhanjiswa le business asibe nesiqiniseko sokuthi kunezimali ezitholakalayo. Umphakathi-ke oswele eGauteng uthola njani nawo ukuthi ukwazi njengoba kuye kwenzeke kwamanye amatiko a-government la khona uthole kokuthi uyakwazi uyokhulekela maybe ko-small business development ukuthi ngicela ningichazeni ngikhona ukuphakamisa ushishino. Kule department le akucaci lokho ukuthi ema-indigenous communities la inakekelele emvelo abesaqhathwa kanjani akukhulunywa lokho. Okwesibili akukwazi ukuchaza kahle kokuthi labantu abenza labafuyile bazoncedeka kanjani mhlawumbe asekuthiwa kunezinto eze-relief. Ziyabuya lezinto ze-relief chairperson ungamangali ngoba lokhu sesiphila ezweni lakhona sekunzima kakhulu ukuphila ngoba akusekho ley'mali sekufanele ukuthi lamatiko esiwabhadalelayo iy'mali zama-permits nemali zama-license basibhekelele ukuze ukuthi sikwazi ukuphila. Sikhulumile ukuthi siyavumelana namanye ama-section o-section 23 ko-section 34 cishe konke lokho siyavumelana nawo. Okunye-ke esifuna ukukubuza ngokuthi ku-section 35 sithe-ke please clarify ukuthi mawukhuluma ngekomiti nanawukhuluma nge-council lo mehluko la kulezinto ezimbili noma kuyephinde kuthi ngathi kuyangcubuzana. Kodwa konke lokho sicabanga ukuthi che sizawuzwa kahle nangabe le department seyisiphendula okanye seyicubungula. And then-ke bese-ke in conclusion-ke che ne-leadership ekhona namhlanje ukuthi-ke the objects of the bill, they do not encourage the protection of these natural forests. Siyakuzwisisa ukuthi bathikithi lona akusiwo umthetho ohamba wodwa, ngumthetho ophinde uphelekezelwe i-NEMLA Act. Kodwa-ke phela ngabe kusizile kokuthi kubuye kube nezinto ezinjalo ngoba sifuna ukubona lokuthi into ye-equitable beneficiation ayicaciseke ngoba nangabe ingacaciselekile izawuhlupha lezo zinto lezo because esikhathini esiningi uthole ukuthi kufika abantu ongqonkulu bafike ba-occupye basebenzise these natural forests at the day kungabi nento ethile ebuya back ekutheni sustain lama-communities who are hosting these resources. Ngiloko lokusikhalisayo. The bill must encourage communities to cultivate trees in their homesteads and villages to promote sustainable livelihoods and mitigate climate change. It speaks about promoting equity and yet does not discuss equitable beneficiation of proceeds derived from the commercialization of these natural forests and woodlands. And it does not promote the participation of indigenous peoples and communities on this council. So long as just emphasize nje asesibone phela kubhaliwe kungabi nokuthi bathi kukhona bakucabangile ngengqondo kodwa sikubone kuba khona kule section B la khona kukhulunywa ngalama groups lazavuleti akhethwe nje ngicabanga ukuthi shelo kuningi kwakhona kuningi kakhulu sizokuthumela bonke abahlonishwa sithembe bokuthi nizawuthatha lesithuba ngokuthi ni-incorporate le-imfuno zethu noma izicelo zethu into the bigger document. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
Siyathokoza Gogo Phepsile. Gogo Phepsile, siyabonga ukuthi nina nihlangane lapho emahhovisi wenu. Kodwa inkinga yami akuna social distance lapho nihleli khona. Kunabantu abadala balapho abafakanga ama-mask. Tshela ugogo Dlori lapha ukuthi siyabonga, siyambona udla nama-snacks lapha, esifuna ukubona wena njengomuntu okhulumayo. Kodwa ngicela nje abantu abadala indlondlo ba-observe i-social distance, sicela bafake ama-mask. Ngiyambona kumanje ugogo Dlori kunomunye umuntu ongapha eceleni kwakhe. Faka isikipho esimhlophe, akafakanga i-social distance ayikho lapha. Siyacela, siyathokoza abantu abadala, sicela nangabe niyi-group nisendaweni eyodwa asiwugcineni ama-regulations social distance, sifake nama-mask. Uyambona mina ngihleli nje ngedwa la ngoba iy'ngane zingale ngaphandle ingako ngafakanga i-mask. Sibacele-ke gogo ukuthi angazi noma banawe lapho na, kodwa ngibona ugogo Dlori usasekhona la. Sicela sicimele ividiyo yakhe ngoba sicele la umuntu ofaka ividiyo kuba umuntu lo okhulumayo. Thokoza gogo, siyabonga umuntu omdala. Sibongile i-submission gogo Phepsile, sethemba i-department izophendula la kuphenduleka khona, kodwa i-intention ukuthi singarespondi, sihambise lama-submission ukuze bakwazi ukuthi nasekwenziwa lo mthetho babhekelele lokhu okuphawuliwe. Uma bekhona balungise la kungalungiseka khona, and uma bengakhoni baphinde babuye basichazele futhi ukuthi yingani kungalungiseki. Ngiyakuzwa futhi isikhalo sakho sendaba ze-relief sisasekhona nala. Ngikuzwe kahle umuntu omdala, siyathokoza. If there's any other stakeholder wants to make a submission, can they do that? Ungaswitcha off ivideo yakho umuntu omdala, siyathokoza. May I allow any other stakeholder who wants to make a submission in the meeting? If there's no one, can I count to 1, 2, 3? If there's no one, then may I allow the department, provincial department, to speak to what was raised by Mr. Plaki on the issues of the program, awareness program. And I think the department also can also give the view on the issue of the curriculum. What is the stand between the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Education on the curriculum? And also, but I think we can just give details on how can they participate on the programs of the department. I know that we have a program which is called Batupili, Bontlekibutu. I think we can introduce those programs. And then we'll come to the national department to come and respond or give clarities on seeking questions asked by Gogo Phepsile. Thokozani, Department of GDAT, can you give the responses to Mr. Plaki?
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Yes, and we would probably welcome later on a broader engagement on outreach and awareness, and we do really agree that it's quite critical. So for obvious reasons, this year, 2020, a lot of our outreach programs, especially to schools, haven't happened and they had to be deferred to 2021. So we have been rolling out the schools education program, especially around climate change, clean up and waste management initiatives, and we are building on onto that. So we will, in 2021, post-COVID, have to enhance the number of those initiatives that we are doing. Including, that also includes taking, so for all our reserves, we've got a program with the different schools where we take school children to nature reserves and teach them on a number of conservation and biodiversity issues there. So for example, Seiker Bosrand has got camping facilities for school tours that we conduct. Now, when it comes to the curriculum, so we are working very closely with National Department on that, and National Department has got a focal point on sector education where there is programs around educating. Integrating into the curriculum, hopefully the colleagues from National will touch on that one, because it would be an engagement between National Department of Basic Education as well as Environmental Affairs on how we can practically integrate into the curriculum itself. There are natural science subjects that are taken by school children, but at some point they are not compulsory as children reach the higher grades, where they would choose probably commerce and other subjects that wouldn't include natural resource issues. Honorable member also raised the issue of vandalism and the protection of our parks in all earnest. So it's also our concern that a number of our parks are being vandalized whenever we correct and put up fences. There is vandalism. So over and above the outreach at schools, there is a need for outreach to broader communities. And Honorable Chairperson, we will come back to appraise the committee on these matters and perhaps even seek assistance from yourselves as community leaders on how we engage with communities around our nature reserves, so that they value them even more and help us in protecting and preventing anarchy there. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Can we then allow the Department National to respond to the clarity-seeking questions and the submission made by Gogo Pepsile? You may not respond to the detail of the submission, because the submission is a submission, but a clarity on areas where they wanted some clarity. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members, and thank you, members, for the question. Maybe before I can respond to Gogo Maseko, I would like to also indicate that I'm not alone. I'm with my colleagues. Where they need to add, they can do so. So I will first start with the question of Ntate Plachi, just to add from where the provincial government has already alluded to. Within the department, how do we cultivate awareness in schools? Within the department, we have got various programs. For example, we have got a program called ABBA. ABBA, that is a monthly event that is held every September, whereby schools, we go to schools and promote the planting of trees. We also promote schools to participate in a festival called Khau Festival. It's also about planting of trees. We also promote awareness to schools by conducting trainings, school talks, and we do have a relationship with the municipalities. We work together in this partnership to reach out to the communities. And if I can go to Gogo Maseko submission, how do we promote the protection of natural forest? Yes, as a department, the Act make provisions for the protection of these natural resources through various mechanisms. For example, Section 7 deals with natural forests. In terms of Section 7, the minister can declare an area as a natural forest. Currently, the minister has declared 27 types of natural forest. The Act also makes provision for the protection of this forest and trees by declaring an area as a state forest, or by declaring trees to be protected trees, or declaring an area to be a protected area or as a control forest area. And also in terms of the issue of the greater participation, in terms of Section 1 of the Principal Act, the purpose of this act are to promote sustainable management and development of forests for the benefit of all, and create the condition necessary to restructure forestry in state forests, provide special measures for the protection of certain forests and trees, promote the sustainable use of forests for environmental, economic, educational, recreational, cultural, health and spiritual purposes, and promote community forestry. Lastly, promote greater participation in all aspects of forestry and the forest product industry by the persons from disadvantaged by unfair discrimination. That's how those provisions are already there in the Principal Act for the promotion of greater participation. There is a question that it's there on the chart. Let me go to the chart. The question on the chart is about, is there any provision from the National Forest that protect the woodlands? Yes, there is a provision that protect the woodland. Section 33A of the Principal Act stipulates that it deals with the principle of sustainable forest management. One of the principles is that a minimum area of each woodland type should be conserved. So we do use those sections. And also Section 12 of the Principal Act stipulates that the minister may declare a particular tree or a particular group of trees or a particular woodland to be protected. The minister has already used this provision, Section 12, by declaring a woodland in the Northern Cape. There is a woodland that we have declared to be protected in terms of Section 12. And I think I will also go back to Gogo Maseko, whereby she wanted to know about the difference between the council and the committee. The council, we are talking about the National Forest Advisory Council. That is the council established in terms of Section 33. So there are two committees. This NFA established these committees to support the council. The two committees are Committee on Sustainable Forest Management and Committee on Access. I will allow my colleagues to add where I might have missed the question or add more information, especially under the area of commercialization. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Then let's allow the additions, if any.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning. My name is Phumeza Nodata from the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. I think Shumani has covered all the issues. I think from my side, what I would probably say is we look forward to getting the submissions from the stakeholders, because I think some of them will assist us in terms of how do we deal with additional issues that are for day-to-day use as part of us implementing the Act. From my side, I would also say that in terms of the National Forest Advisory Council, I probably think that the stakeholders that we have today, because it seems like there's a I don't know whether there's an organization within Gauteng that deals mainly with traditional healers, or who can then assist us in terms of, for instance, what Gogo Maseko referred to, the use of the trust fund, because that trust fund is a trust fund that is mainly looking at forest access in terms of spiritual, in terms of education and awareness and all of those things, and how that trust fund can probably be better utilized. The council at this stage is looking at those issues, looking at how can we make that trust fund be sustainable, how can we make it more accessible, and all of that. So maybe the inputs we're going to receive from the return submissions might assist the council in terms of trying to deal with those issues. And I would probably think that when this current council's term ends in 2022, we will issue again through media that people can nominate. And I think what we will do is we will work with the colleagues from the provincial legislature so that we can keep the details of the people who attended, so that when that time comes, we can invite them to participate and be nominated to serve in the council. Because I think in terms of protection of these natural forests is something that we would like to have more of it, while also allowing that there is use, so that we balance the use and protection for the benefit of our communities. Yeah, I think from my side, I would just add that little bit. I saw also on the chart that there has been an explanation in terms of the fact that the Principal Act, in terms of Section 16, 17, and 18, does deal with the issues of protection and deforestation and how we kept deforestation, which is what Ushumani was referring to. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much then for the clarity. Let me just check for the last time. Is there anyone that I am leaving out before we close the meeting? Today's meeting was just for submissions. The committee will capture and make submissions to the national NCOP. And also as a committee will be expected to say, are we supporting the bill? What are the implications of the bill? And we will do that at a later or in another committee meeting. I just want to check from the stakeholders. I see Pumeza, not that. Do you still want to speak, Pumeza? Pumeza, do you still want to speak?
No, apologies, Chairperson. I didn't mute myself. Apologies for that.
Okay, I see Kauta Mokwena.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Kauta, you'll be the last one, then we will then close the session. Kauta, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's Kauta Mokwena from the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. Just a contribution relating to the question by Mr. Blackie from CDB on the issue of 3 R's, the reuse, reduce, and recycle in schools. A contribution also to the inputs by the colleagues from the province that we are working on a awareness program that talks to good green deeds as well as chemicals and waste economy, Pakistan awareness initiatives in line with the launch of the good green deeds as well as chemicals and waste economy, Pakistan, that President Ramaphosa launched on the 8th of March 2019. So it's not part of the amendments currently, but it is already in the cabinet approved National Waste Management Strategy that we currently rolling out for implementation. So we'll be interacting with a number of stakeholders, including the communities. I've taken Mr. plug his contact details so that he can share his details with the colleagues who are working on the awareness programs, as this also relates to the schools as well as institutions of higher learning. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mokoena. Honorable members, let me just check from you. Is there any comment that you want to do today before we close the session? Members?
Chairperson, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hassan. Member Silias? Member Mngube? Member Ghana? Member Makubela?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I think the National Department will respect the stakeholders that will write their inputs to them by responding back either prior to the NCOP sitting or after the NCOP sitting, so that their responses come back to us, and then we give them back the responses in terms of what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mngube. Member Silias, are you okay? Okay, I take it that members will still have a portfolio committee meeting where we are going to look at all the submissions and come up with our view on behalf of all the stakeholders. If time and the conditions allow us, it may be a contact meeting, but we'll see as to what are the conditions that are there. Let me take this opportunity. Ngibonge bantu abadala, ngibonge zonke indlondlo ezikhona, ngibonge wonke amakhehla, ngibonge bonke abogogo, ngibonge wonke amagojwane, ngibonge bonke abothwasa abakhona ngaphakathi kwendawo. Let me thank all the stakeholders who attended the meeting from different organizations, youth organization, women organization. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the department, the national department, and also the provincial department. As ngichazile earlier, is that submission or noma yini enifuna ukuyibhala niyiphawule nilethe ku committee, sicela ukuthi siyithole ngeyi5 zaka October. Uthi uMamulebu bonke laba abacele ama-bill nama-document bazowathola, kodwa bonke laba aba-invite-iwe namhlanje uthi yena ama-bill asendiwe. Nalaba beba-attende i-workshop, i-bill bayisendelwe. Kodwa-ke uma kunesidingo futhi singaphinde futhi sisende-ke ngoba siyazi ukuthi i-computer inokudla ama-document, idle namagama. Ngaloko-ke ngithanda ukubonga. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your attendance. Thank you very much to the support staff. Thank you very much to all who made presentation to the meeting. We also like to thank our technical staff, because this meeting will not be successful without the IT. We know that we'll have expected 65 people to attend the meeting. I'm told 55 were able to log in and participated or were part of the meeting. Our next meeting, which is a public hearing, honorable members, will be on the 19th. But on the 19th, we'll be having different stakeholders, because it will be the same meeting on the 19th. So we'll be allowing other stakeholders to participate in this meeting. With those words, honorable members, thank you very much. A public participation hearing is adjourned. Umhlangano sowuvaliwe, ngibonge kakhulu.
Thank you.
Siyathokoza Chair, thokoza Ndlondlo. Thokoza Honorable.
Siyathokoza.
Thanks, Chair.
Thokoza Chair, siyabonga. Noma mhlambe lesi.
Siyabonga Chair.
How are you going to fit any presents into these? What's that being a Christmas tree? It's a nice plant for the side, but that is.